Check 1, 2. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Rescue Owners Live. My name is KIRK. I am your host, and I'm excited to welcome you to Season 2, Episode number 18. If this is your first time joining us, Rescue Owners Live is designed by owners for owners, that is, business owners. We have one goal and one goal only, and that is to help you grow more effectively, efficiently, and profitably, all while achieving your personal, professional, financial goals. As always, we are streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we love an active chat. So do me a favor and type in the chat where you are tuning in from today. We are streaming live from Atlanta, Georgia, and today we have a very special guest. For over 15 years, Jed Olson has helped companies and organizations that struggle to scale past plateaus with his consulting, coaching, and speaking. After leaving a career in charity work, Jed has helped generate millions of dollars in revenue for hundreds of 6, 7, and even 8-figure companies. Jed specializes in creative and scalable approaches to business with systems, IP and market development, and multi-model marketing. With a background in nonprofit fundraising, corporate training, product development, and customer experience, Jed has catalyzed this wealth of experience into his company's proprietary RevScale Launchpad framework for businesses, entrepreneurs, and organizations. Along with his co-founder and wife, Kayla Olson, Jed works with business owners, executive leaders, and management teams to plan, develop, and execute strategies that scale their companies to new heights in revenue, efficiency, and productivity. Jed is a Colorado native, father of 2 boys, and an avid traveler. When he's not consulting clients or speaking on stage, you may find him having hippos dictate his curfew, or figure out the right way to cook a scorpion, or finding 3 sometimes legally questionable, but ways to get to the pyramids. I absolutely love this intro, and you are in for a treat because tonight, give it up in the chat for my friend, Jed Olson.
All right.
Jed, wow. How's it going?
Doing good, man. That was quite the intro, and I love the effects and everything with this streaming platform. So it's great.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Hey, Beth, thank you for joining us. Michael Glover in Arizona, thank you for joining us. Man, Jed, first and foremost, I want to just tell you thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us on Rescue Owners Live. Time is the most valuable thing there is out there, and I really appreciate it because you have a wealth of knowledge, and I know that something that you're going to say tonight is going to absolutely help our listeners. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Kirk. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm always happy to serve fellow business owners, especially those that are in the markets that you serve, Kirk. I know a lot of your market is in the service-based arena, which is mine as well, and particularly in like the health space. So I love it and love everything that you've been doing as well. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Jed, for those, I know you a little bit, but like for those who don't know you and want to go a little bit deeper into who Jed Olson is, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, why you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I'd like to start this is I didn't really get into entrepreneurship by normal means, although I feel that's a very common story with a lot of entrepreneurs. Most of us don't have common stories or upbringings. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was in the construction industry, working his own construction business for a long time. And I saw the long hours that he put in. And honestly, I was a little bit timid to approach entrepreneurship, seeing the struggles that my dad had, both from a financial perspective as well as a time perspective. Being able to I remember many times, I remember like one specific moment where, we were, trying to get to this after school activity that I had. And, for like, I don't know, the 15th time in a row, my dad wasn't able to show up. And, I remember what that felt like. And I remember thinking to myself that I didn't really want to be have that kind of career. I didn't want to have that kind of job that would put me in a place of having a family issue. Family life was definitely important to me. And, the thing is that when my dad was around, it was great to be around him. I was lucky enough to have that kind of relationship. And I think that really hit home for me about 10 years ago. My dad passed away from cancer and just got me really reflective on some of those things. And so instead of entrepreneurship, I got into the nonprofit space in charity work, helping different NGOs around the world, and was in it for 12 years. And ironically enough, it really ended up being the nonprofit version of being an entrepreneur, especially when it comes to like taxes. Anybody who's in that space will know that the IRS sees a entrepreneur and a business owner and somebody that owns their own nonprofit or runs their own nonprofit largely the same when it comes to personal stuff. So I kind of accidentally tripped into it. And then I got exposed to a really cool company called Advance Your Reach. That's actually how KIRK and I also got to know each other. And it's a marketing company that helps people communicate better. And in that time, it just really inspired me to see how entrepreneurship can really grow. I saw a lot of amazing entrepreneurs that had different stories than the one that my dad had growing up. And, it just really inspired me to do that myself, really. And it kind of rekindled that idea of being able to work for yourself and not have to, not really have to sacrifice family along the way, or sacrifice your hobbies, or sacrifice the other things that you want in your personal life. So what I've been doing since I broke out on my own is helping business owners with just that. I help them either with taking back their time and getting really efficient with their operations and systems so that they're not the bottleneck. I call it, there are some bottleneck breakers that I introduce to my clients sometimes. And then on the other side, being able to scale and grow their business in a way that scales up their revenues, of course, but also gives back to the community, gives back to the entrepreneur themselves, gives back to their staff. So I'm really passionate about the holistic model of business. And I think a lot of folks out there are not privileged to really know how to develop an entire business in the right way with the right systems in place.
I love that, because so often, speaking to the holistic side of things, you might have a business owner that is super passionate about this one thing that they do, whether it's welding or CPR training or, a trade or a craft. But when it comes to the business, it's like you're a little bit lost. It's like, okay, how do I file my taxes? How do I market? How do I sell? And so that holistic approach is, huge. And I love that we have you on to talk a little bit more about that. Bottleneck breakers. I'm just curious, what's probably some of the number one bottleneck that you see business owners have?
I think you kind of alluded to a little bit, KIRK. It's the fact that a lot of business owners, especially in the areas that you and me serve in the service-based industry, a lot of us get into a business thinking that's a profession. And so we become the bottleneck by essentially just really focusing on fulfillment only. And by fulfillment, I mean like doing your service, the chiropractor cracking backs, the CPR trainer certifying people in their programs, the hair extension salon doing the hair extensions. And I think one of the things, if you actually really want to grow and scale and make this a business where you can still do the things you love, but do it in less time, is to trust other people. I think the biggest bottleneck is an issue of trust to delegate, get other team members to help with you, actually get team members, start to hire, start to take those risks, whether it's in-house or just getting an outside vendor to at least be a part of the process to help you. But it all first starts with trust. You've got to be able to trust yourself and trust others that they can also help you grow the business and grow it smarter, so that you're not the only one that is teaching the class, cracking the backs, doing the service of whatever it is. You've got to be able to begin to not just step up in that way with a quality of service, but now systematize that to where you can train others to do it as well.
So I think so often we know what to do, but we don't do what we know. And so, to your point on trust, why do you think it is that we have such a hard time as business owners handing over the reins?
I think a big part is there's that cliche phrase that if I want something done right, I have to do it myself.
Gotcha.
So common for so many people. And this even, it goes beyond entrepreneurs. That phrase is used by by managers, by parents, by almost anybody. And the thing is that you have to get used to the idea that it doesn't have to be done 100% right. If you get to 80% efficiency, that's a good first step. If you get to 90% efficiency, now we're talking. If you get to 95, you are in the gold standard of, and I mean by gold standard, I mean by the exception over the rule of being able to delegate to people. So I think a big issue for us that we get caught up in is perfectionism. We think that if we want to get something done, we have to make sure that it's done right. And we step in when we don't need to. I'm actually coaching one of my clients' managers through this process, because in this instance, the owner was able to step out of being the bottleneck, but now the manager is in a bit of a bottleneck position. And as I was debriefing with her on like, what are some of the things that she's the bottleneck for, it's because every time that another staff member comes to her with a question, she just answers it, or she just steps in and solves it for them. And I was talking through her about like, okay, well, what processes are you doing with this? Well, there's all these nuances, this is a customer service type of role. And so she's like talking about all these like nuanced, specific, unique, unicorn customer service issues. And of course, if you've been in any kind of industry with customer service long enough, that there aren't really any unicorns, but a lot of people starting out believe that everybody's a unique situation. So I walked her through that and showed her like, okay, you may not be able to solve every single unique problem, but can you create a team that becomes problem solvers? Because you are obviously thinking in a creative way to solve these problems for customers. You need to train your staff to do the exact same thing. Don't train them on a checklist. Train them on a series of questions that they would be asking themselves to solve the problem for the client. So that's just one example of how you can prevent yourself from releasing the manpower that you have and actually stop creating those bottlenecks.
I love that. Hey, and one thing I see Michael in the chat saying, hey, delegation is so hard. Delegation is so hard sometimes. And so, hey, Michael, I would love, if you want to give some more description in the chat of what in your mind makes it so hard to you. And I'd love to hear what, Jed has to say. So while you're typing that up, I do want to ask Jed, about, you mentioned training. Okay. How important is training, and should everyone do it? Is it only for the few? Tell me about your philosophy when it comes to training.
Yeah. If you want to have a business that scales, you have to have training. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Unless, of course, you want to work 80 hours a week, never see your family or friends, do nothing with your free time, and the only thing that you do is your business. Now, sure, it seems like Gary Vaynerchuk is the one that preaches that, but that's not really my style. And honestly, if you really listen to Gary Vaynerchuk enough, you'll notice that he's actually pretty anti that kind of life as well, although you see him hustling all the time. And so I think training, as far as an importance level, is incredibly, incredibly important. Now, here's the issue. A lot of entrepreneurs aren't great trainers. And you need to be okay with that. So the way that I would have you consider doing this is there's a common thing that a lot of people say, but it's very hard to actually execute on. And that is finding people that are better than you at certain things. You need to, you have some people on one camp saying, delegate your strengths. You have strength finders, of course, saying, focus on your strengths, delegate your weaknesses. I am actually right in the middle. I think you need to delegate both. I think you are good at some things, but you can find somebody else that's even better, because a lot of us as entrepreneurs, in my experience, are in a lot of ways somewhat a jack of all trades. Yes, there's a specialty. A chiropractor obviously isn't a jack of all trades, but if you're getting in and not, a lot of these service-based businesses, they have two choices. You can either go out on your own completely and do your own business. Just you have your certifications, you have the know-how to do what it is that you do to provide a great service, but now it's your job to get the clients. It's your job to fulfill them. It's your job to do accounting. It's your job to do all these things. And while it can be overwhelming, and it usually is, you're at least at a minimum competency with all of it. So you have your jack of all trades folks. Then you've got other folks that you might find yourself in that position and you hate every moment of it. And instead of going, the traditional route where you are wrapped up in a bigger firm, for instance, like financial advisors typically will do this, where you have one financial advisor who's who kind of started the firm, and then you have a bunch of sub advisors that are employees, but they're contractors. So they're kind of, they're both a solopreneur and they also work for somebody else. If that works for you, that works for you. I know for me personally, that no longer works for me, because I have my own business with my own systems and processes now. So I think in any of these cases, you've got to come to a point of delegating some of these things. So in the instance of training, to circle it back, if you're good at training, then start to train people right away. So even if it's just outsourced stuff, even if if it's just like getting your accountant up to speed on how exactly you are processing different accounts or whatever, or if it's on the marketing side and you just really need some help over there in creating leads or creating brand awareness or whatever, start to find people that are better at it than you. And if you're not good at training, then by all means, you need to find somebody that's really good at training others as well. And then they can just catch the vision. There's in the book Traction, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He's the guy.
Gino Wickman.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gino Wickman. He's a smart dude. Great book. If you haven't read it, get it.
Yeah, exactly. And in the book Traction, he talks about a lot of these things when it comes to training. There's a visionary and an integrator. And if you have an integrator that can be really good at dissemination and delegation, then that is going to be your first major key hire, is getting an integrator, because most entrepreneurs are the visionary type. The vast majority that I've ever really met. Sometimes they'll be paired. Their personality profile also works good with training, but that's a rare breed. So at the end of the day, you can even delegate delegation to a certain degree if you find the right person.
I love that. Okay, so we did hear back from Michael, and before I, bring up what he said, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that share button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, whether you're listening from LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, because I guarantee someone in your network needs to hear what Jed has to say today. So Michael, first of all, he goes, delegation and perfectionists, do not mix well. And this is the next thing he said. When something is super important, it feels like even 90% or 95, I would even say in this case, might not be enough. But you have to give things to people because you are just one person. What would you say to Michael, who is, has, a very, needing to be perfectionist, in his work that he's doing? He's also a nonprofit and whatnot. What would you say to Michael in this case?
Yeah. So here's a very practical way to look at it. I kind of try to convince the emotional side of me through the practical side of me sometimes. So hopefully this aligns for you as well, Michael. But for me, it's thinking about volume over percentages. So I'll give you an analogy, and then I'll give you an example. So the analogy would go at, especially if you're in the nonprofit world, this might align particularly well. You have nonprofits that, really talk about having, 5% overhead. And that's all that they do. All the rest of their donations goes directly to the work that they're doing, essentially. And all the background is limited on the back end to 5%, even when it comes to fundraising. So you have this small pie. If you want to workshop this with me, draw a very small circle and then draw a very small sliver of that circle. Now, in order to grow that pie, in order to make that pie big enough to serve as many people as you possibly can, whether it's nonprofit or whether it's a service-based business, whatever, you want to get bigger in revenue so that you can have more impact with a wider variety of people. That means a larger pie. But in order to get that pie, you have to now increase that percentage on the overhead from 5% to 25%. But let me ask you this, is 75% of 10 million more than 90% of 1 million? It is, isn't it? You're
We're all like doing the math in our head, bringing our phones out.
volume trumps percentage. And the only way to get volume is to scale with people. So if you're training for a sales team, for instance, if you can get 5 people to do what you know, like an owner will always sell the best. I don't care what people say, like even if you're bad at sales, typically, because you are the one that's most convicted about your services. So if you can convert at, let's say 50%, but it's just one of you and you can do 20 appointments a week, and that's your time availability, but you can convert at 15%. That's 10 new clients a week. Now imagine having 5 people doing that work for you, and they're converting at, let's say 30% a week, and they're also able to do it full time, so they can do 50 appointments a week. You don't need to do the math because I'm not going to. I don't do that kind of crazy mental math. My nephew actually could. He's crazy with that kind of stuff. But you can just kind of see with that example that your business will exponentially increase, even though the percentages are worse, because your volume is much higher.
Love it. Love it. I think he literally just said absolutely agree. So I really do appreciate you breaking that down, because he's not the only person listening tonight that needs to hear what you just said. So I do kind of want to go back to training, because as far as specific training, because I mean I'm big into sales training. I know you do a lot of coaching, but like, let's say we're talking to the 6-figure business who is just now starting out, and they got a little bit of revenue, but they want to get to 7 figures, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say is the type of training that they need to focus on first?
Yeah, so I'll kind of take this as a 2-pronged approach. I'm going to take this as a way of saying, like, what training is going to improve yourself? And then going from there, how can you use training as a way to scale your own business? So the training that you obviously need, you always need to be having some sort of input into your business. I mean, even just listening to this, exchange, I'm hoping that you guys attend KIRK's live every week, because I'm assuming that like most of these lives are going to have value to add to your business. And, whether it's reading books, attending lives like this, listening to podcasts, or investing even more heavily into like coaching or your own consulting, different things like that is going to really help you grow and develop. Because the other thing that I found with particularly entrepreneurship, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you are, in the 6 going on to 7 figures business, a lot of us didn't get any kind of education when it comes to this. Nobody teaches you like this way in school. And even for those of us that might have gone to business school, I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to that went to business school, got their MBA or whatever, and found that most of the things that they talked about were either already outdated by the time they graduated, or were mostly theory and not very well developed in practice. And I
agree 100%. I went to business school, and like, yeah. I learned more when I started my business and actually doing it, the practical side of things, like you're saying, than I did, in 4 years at the university.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that is such a common story that I found. So you have to continually be educating yourself in as many ways as possible. So training yourself is definitely key in the first point of anything. But then the next thing is going to be scaling your training itself. So I'll give you an example, especially if you're in the 6-figure mark. My guess is a lot of folks are going to be in the solopreneur, or maybe solopreneur plus a few vendors. Like they don't have any W-2s, in using American terms, they don't have any in-house employees, but you might have a few vendors that help out with some things. You might have an accountant, you might have a web designer, you might have a copywriter, you might have some different folks that help you to a limited degree. In any of those cases, your next step is going to see how to do one of 2 things. You can scale internally, which is what we've kind of been talking about, which is training your team and delegating, things like that. But here's another tip that a lot of people don't necessarily realize. You can also do this externally as well. Because if you're doing this internally, a lot of times you're going to have to do this with in-house staff. Like you're going to have hired employees to delegate these kinds of things that I was referencing earlier. If you want to get an integrator, they can start as a 1099, but you're probably going to want to get them as an employee as soon as possible. And part of that is to give them security, but also to give you security as well. Because as you do training, a big fear that I know a lot of entrepreneurs have is if they do the training and properly get somebody, who's to say that they don't leave, that they don't go and do their own thing and go and do something else. And I mean, honestly, I'm kind of an example of that. I worked with an amazing company, Advance Your Reach, for 3.5 years, was able to see them from the ground up, but eventually, got to a point where I had to go and do my own thing. But, that's more of a personality profile. Not everybody's designed for entrepreneurship per se, but that was the case for me. So what are some ways that you can kind of mitigate against that and also help you scale even faster? And what I mean by an external scale with that is through essentially certifications, licensing, things like that. So I'm talking to a photographer right now as an example. So, she's gone through we have this blueprint that we've been doing with some clients that's at kind of that level. And, walking her through this strategy, she has been in business for, like 10 years or so. But she's still, she's making good money for herself, but she wants to, actually like really grow it and get it to be a really good revenue driver for her business. And now there's strategies internally, like offering different services and things like that. But one of the ideas that we had as far as scaling is to have a process. She's going to create her own intellectual property of how she takes headshots. And she's then going to package that and sell that as a licensing deal to other photographers so that they don't have to think about their own way of doing headshots. They can just get certified and then go and do that as well. And the reason why that's so powerful is that, especially in services like this, in services like the photography industry, this is also true in financial planning. This is also true in many health services spaces. You might have somebody that comes in, does 1099 work, does contractor work, but then they go and do that thing themselves after they kind of like soaked up your training. But if you have a certification program where you are licensing your intellectual property, you've trademarked that property as well, that makes it a lot more protected for you. And it still gives that benefit and that kind of freedom for that agent to scale with. You see this is actually a very big and common one in the States there's so many certification programs out there. Well, why not use some of those things and come up with your own version of that? A lot of us have, I was just talking today with another consultant actually, and she has, a personality profile certification with DISC. She is certified with, which one is it? It's Agile or Lean or one of those. And she has like 3 or 4 different certifications. She uses it all in a very unique way when she's working with consulting clients. And what I've encouraged her to do is to essentially take all those things, yes, and those are the third-party affiliations, but the glue that's holding it all together is her own intellectual property. It's her own processes. It's the things that she's done the hard work of, okay, this works, but this doesn't for this particular situation. And so that's one way that she's able to scale, because now she can do that and no longer be the consultant. She can contract that out and have a licensing agreement to where that person's not going to leave, because if they leave, they're not going to be able to use all those materials going forward. So just to simplify and recap that real quick, obviously we talked about the internal training. That's always a key thing. Training your staff, whether they're contractors or employees, find an integrator. And on the other side, maybe for some of you where it makes sense, you might want to explore abilities to get other people to do the fulfillment and work for you, or expanding into new markets through certification, licensing, and intellectual property.
Love that. Hey, listen, if you have questions about IP, which is the intellectual property, systems, market development, and multi-model marketing, listen, this is the time to put it in the chat, because we have Jed Olson here with us live, and he wants to answer your questions. If you haven't done so already, again, I want to encourage you to go ahead and hit that share button, because someone in your network needs to hear what Jed has to say. And listen, I'm looking at, I almost have a full page of notes over here. I mean, I'm personally taking notes myself, because this is incredible content, and I hope you're learning as much as I am. Jed, you mentioned the certification. I absolutely love the certification. Actually, before I mention the certification, you mentioned the blueprint. So for everyone listening here tonight, we're going to be bringing up the blueprint a little bit later on tonight in a very, very special offer. So get excited for that. Stay tuned because we're going to be bringing that up momentarily. But Jed, the certification, am I correct in hearing? Because what I heard is, that breeds opportunity for continued education, to get recertified maybe, or maybe even workshops if you create your own intellectual property. Is that the case?
Yeah. So I call this framework IP squared, essentially. And the reason why I call it IP squared is you can scale your company in two different ways when it comes to intellectual property. So this is through your own intellectual property that you yourself develop, and through third-party intellectual property as well. So, there's so many service providers out there that have certifications. So in my mind, I think you need to use both, like in almost every instance. And here's a few reasons why. If you're a chiropractor or you're a CPR instructor, or you have, or maybe you're, like in my world, like being in the nonprofit field, we were working with 18 to 25-year-olds to get involved in charity work. You know how many organizations work with youth to try to get them involved in charity work? There's hundreds. So what differentiates you? Now, yes, there's the conversation about branding and making sure that the way that you express yourself and the way that your business express yourself is unique and unique to a certain market. That's all well and good. But the practical side of it, to me, is intellectual property, because who's to say, like with consultant A or consultant B, or chiropractor A and chiropractor B, or lawyer A and lawyer B, all of them have the same certifications, the same training. So the only thing that differentiates them is the brand. And I think that is actually a weak argument. If the only thing that you have to differentiate yourself is your brand, then you're really going to have to be very unique. I remember, I think this was actually, I'm trying to remember what his name was, Kirk. He was at one of the conferences with us, the realtor from Missouri with the sleeveless blazers.
Yes. Oh my goodness. His name.
The white blazer broker. I remember that.
Blazer broker. Jared Ritter. Jared Ritter.
There we go.
That's who it is.
Ritter. So,
but you remembered his company name.
I remember. Yeah. So like, you got to be like, that's because he has a ridiculous brand. It works. It's ridiculous, but it works. He wears sleeveless, bright colored blazers, and he's a realtor, and he's one of the most well-known realtors in town. So yes, you can do that. So if you want to go like ridiculous branding, that's one way to do it. Another way that might be a little bit more conservative, a little bit easier for some of us to do, is to have a couple of things on top of that. Have more certifications than the rest of the competition. So you have other people's other third-party intellectual properties that you have that very few people do. So instead of being a chiropractor with one certification with one association, you actually have 3 or 4. I used to be a personal trainer like about 8 or 9 years ago. Now I didn't do this because I really only got the certification to for my own self. I wanted to know how to work out better. But a lot of the folks that were in the space, same space as me, I know the ones that succeeded better were not just certified in the NCSA or I forgot the acronyms and all that stuff. There's the National Sports Medicine, there's the Academy of Sports Medicine, there's like 3 others. So there's a few trainers out there that actually get certified in all of them. That's a differentiator. But another one that's even more, so that's level 1. But if you really want to take it to level 2, don't just get certifications, more certifications than everyone else. Become someone that can certify. Or maybe if you can't certify yourself, because some industries that might be very hard, like in the medical field, that could be particularly difficult with governing bodies and regulations. However, if you teach something a certain way and get that whole training regimen trademarked so that it's kind of a supplement to the certification that makes it even better, that's a fantastic way to do so. In less regulated industries where you don't necessarily need a certification, like photography, for instance, I remember that there was this, there's this, one of the best real estate photography firms here in town, and they trademarked a photography process that they do. They called it True View Photography. That's IP. They have this IP that they use, and being on the inside, I've been a photographer, a hobbyist photographer for a while. All I know, it's simply just like a button they click in Photoshop. But because they have a button that they click in Photoshop and they designed like the whole batch process around it, they named it. And now it's intellectual property. Nobody else can say that they have this true view system that makes it to where you have this beautiful room that also shows the mountains in the background or the beach in the background that's fully crystal clear, looks better than when you're in person. They named it. A lot of other photographers do it, but they don't name it, and they're not getting less business because of it.
Hey, so why do you think it is that, I mean, all of these things that you're saying is like, well, that makes sense. I mean, that's like obvious. Of course I should, be certified in as many things as possible. Of course I should become an instructor if I can in my industry. Of course I should have my own IP. Why aren't people doing this more frequently?
I think the first one that comes to mind for me is that a lot of folks at the beginning think that like a lot of us get to the certification, we think, okay, now I have a business. I can't tell you how many times that's happened when, whether it was personal trainers or CPR instructors or a photographer, you name it. So many people in the service-based business, they get the certification. Now they think that they have a business. They're going to open up an office. They're going to get their Google business listing up, and now everything's going to, roll in. So I think a lot of folks, it is obvious when you hear it, but it's not so obvious that you would think about it outright. I think, you got to think about the few that are out there that have started their own certification programs. The ones that have succeeded are the ones that we see, and it's definitely a hard process to get the notoriety around it. And a lot of people think whether or not they want to go through with that. And my thing about it is you don't need to be that level. You don't need to be the next Academy of Sports Medicine. You don't need to be the American Dental Association. You don't need to be all of these different like governing bodies and try to scale that way. Most of us don't want to do that. But if you at least have a process that you have named and make it your own intellectual property, that's something that no other person in your local market can do. And that elevates your brand. It elevates you as more of an expert. I'll give you another photography example, but the most well-known headshot photographer in business, at least to my knowledge, is Peter Hurley. Now, he's developed his own headshot framework, and it's around his brand. He's a personal brand, so it's his, Peter Hurley headshot photography stuff. But, aside from his naming convention, his process is so well done that most photographers vie to get his training. And now he actually runs his own workshops. He has a bunch of his own training. Does he certify people? I think he does. Is it recognized by the governing body of photographers? No. But is it necessary? Is he still making a lot of money for less effort than it was taking him 20 years ago? Yes. So you got to realize that you don't have to be, you don't have to scale big to do these kind of things that I'm saying. You can be a solopreneur that now adds this new revenue stream to your business to where now you have intellectual property. And even at the very end of the day, I encourage each of you, even if you're like, you know what, Jed, I don't want to have, contractors take my process and run with it and get a licensing fee. I don't want to, train others around it. I just want to stick in my lane of being a solopreneur. You are going to protect yourself far better if you have a name process and a better framework, and you're going to have better customer experience because you're going to have a much more better outlined customer journey as well. So even at the very basic level, even if you just have it for yourself, it's going to benefit yourself and your customers exponentially. And it's even then still a great way to scale.
Okay, so speaking of trademarks, I know people who literally just throw the trademark, tab right next to the, what you created. Do you have to get it officially, trademarked? Is there a process for that? Or can you just literally make a name, throw that trademark on? Help those who don't understand the process.
Yeah. So I will first say, open this next section up by saying I'm not a lawyer. So you will have, by all means, cross-reference everything that I say. This is, to my knowledge, what I know the process to be. So anytime that you see the word TM, or the letters TM, to my knowledge, that is simply you making sure that you have documentation that this is your business, that this is your intellectual property, this is your framework, this is your widget, this is your product, this is your service. And it can actually protect you in court many times from what I've heard, as long as you have a lot of documentation that, of historical evidence that you've been using this for a while. So that's where I'm at right now. Like with my Rev Scale Launchpad, I have this, 3-part framework, and we've been talking a little bit about that. We've been primarily in the lane of intellectual property, IP squared. So that's my intellectual property. Eventually, though, I'm going to want to take that from a TM to an R, a registered trademark. So a registered trademark is the more cream of the crop. That's where you hire a lawyer, a trademark lawyer specifically. They're going to do the hard work to make sure that there's no conflicts of interest. There's nobody else out there that's in a similar industry as you that has the same name or the same product or service, et cetera. And that way you can get your product, your service, or your brand, more protected with a registered trademark. So you don't at first, and I recommend to most people, don't sweat the details. At the end of the day, if you absolutely have to rebrand because of something that you just didn't realize, it's not something that you won't, you will survive it. If you have to. One of my clients actually, that I was saying earlier from a hair salon, this is a process that we're going through right now on the registered trademark side. And one of the options that might be on the table is to rebrand. We'll end up seeing whether or not that's necessary. And my a tip around this, just one quick tip, if you're thinking about this from the legal side, is try your best to not use common language or common words only when you're trying to describe your services, your business, your training, certifications, any of that stuff. The more unique you can be, the better. This is why Google had no problem trademarking Google because nobody else used it. I mean, Apple, that one might have been a bit of a harder sell, but I think that there's a pretty distinguishing factor between an actual fruit and an iPhone. So I think they also, escaped that one pretty easily. So that's to give you a few examples.
What would you say? I know you mentioned the Launchpad and the Blueprint. What's the main difference between the two? And if you were, someone, starting out, whether you're 6, 7 figures, where would you start?
Yeah,
in your world.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of break down like how I've done my own business when it comes to this stuff. So the Blueprint that I mentioned earlier, that's kind of our entry level flagship program. So that's, for folks that are, either just launching a business or trying to get to 6 figures and beyond. That's a service that we provide. And I'll share some more details here in a little bit. The Rev Scale Launchpad, this is our intellectual property that we use with every single one of our services. So when somebody goes through our Blueprint, we go through my Rev Scale Launchpad. So we talk about IP squared. Are you going to use third-party intellectual property? Are you going to use do your own intellectual property? Are you going to do both? Are you going to scale with systems? We were talking about training earlier as well. So, what trainings do you need, or what systems and processes do you need in your business? And then the third part is 3X marketing. I have 3 marketing strategies that I use with almost every business that I consult with. So no matter what level of service, essentially, that somebody comes in with my business, they're always going through my intellectual property, which is the Rev Scale Launchpad. And then the Blueprint is just one method that people get that at an entry level. But I also have more high-end coaching and consulting programs as well. But at the end of the day, the framework or the intellectual property doesn't change. The depth that I'm guiding someone down that intellectual property does change. And the same thing can be true for you in your own training certifications, in your own scaling, in the services that you provide. You can also take that as well. You can, take your intellectual property and you can scale it with your services, depending on, which kind of business you're in.
Love that. Thank you for breaking that down, because I was curious myself, actually.
No worries.
As far as the Blueprint, I know that and you mentioned, as far as licensing earlier, and that's basically what we're doing here tonight with your content. We've created a licensing agreement. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say that, but
I'm good if you're good, Kirk.
All right, cool.
It's
so
really between you and me. So as long as we're both good with it, we're good.
Well, one of our core values is transparency. So I truly have no problem with everyone knowing that the mastermind behind this is not me. It is the guy who has helped, generate millions of dollars in revenue for hundreds of 6, 7, and 8-figure companies. And that guy's name is Jed Olson. And so when, I heard that he started his own company, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, listen, this is what I like to do. How can we work together? And it's been an incredible process. And so part of that was licensing the blueprint. So what we like to do tonight is have an incredible offer. I think it's going to be, up for a few days, and we want to make sure that this is something that you take full advantage of. All right. So, Jed, if you're ready, share screen, whatever you want to do. You tell them about this new process that we got going on here, the blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kirk. So this is something that Kirk and I were discussing a few weeks ago to really serve his community and you guys. So let me go ahead and get my screen shared. All right, and now the next thing is, Kirk, do I need to do anything on my end to get it on the live?
Let's see here. When you hit share screen, I think you just got to choose what you want and then hit share. So if you have multiple tabs up, you would just click the tab or the window or the Chrome or whatever that you want, and then hit share.
Yeah, so it looks like I did that. I see on my bottom screen that it's in the background. I don't know if you see a window on your control center side.
Let's see if there's a way to. I'm checking out all these options over here.
No worries. And if not, we can just stick with my beautiful face.
Okay. So what I'm seeing, let's see. Let me see if I can get off. Oh, here we go. Boom.
There we go.
Solid.
Right. Sweet. Okay. This is new technology for me, so I'm excited. All right. So this is the strategic growth blueprint. So the way that I like to describe this, I have a slide describing this as well later, but I just like to get the cat out of the bag with it. Essentially, like what it is it's a pretty good marriage between having an online course and some one-on-one coaching. And the way that I like to if anybody has ever taken an online course that's in this audience, you might have had this problem. You might have had this issue where you bought an online course. The training might be great. It might be a phenomenal course, or it might not have been such a great course. But the problem is you had to figure out how to implement somebody else's framework, somebody else's intellectual property to your own business. So what I've done with this blueprint is I've tried to remove that. I've tried to make it to where myself, the instructor, is specifically telling you what you need to do to apply this framework, this intellectual property to your own business, so that you can walk away with a 6 to really 12-month action plan to scale your business in a smart way. So whether that goal is to 6 figures, whether that goal is to 500,000 or to $1 million plus, this blueprint is designed to help you. So this is a review of the Ref Scale Launchpad that I mentioned earlier. This is what we go through. We talk about IP square. We had a very large part of our conversation around that. So that's one thing that we look at. Of course, one thing that we do in the blueprint is that we look at what your goals, what your desires, what your own growth goals are with your business, and we put together a plan custom to your own goals. So if some parts of the intellectual property section doesn't align for you, then we take some of those out and we add different strategies in its place. The next part is growth systems. Like I said earlier, this is the training. This is the optimization. This is making sure your operations are streamlined. And actually, one thing that I didn't mention earlier is that these two things play off of each other a lot. With intellectual property and growth systems, you can marry those together sometimes, especially if you want to do another scaling option I didn't mention earlier, which is franchising. If you want to franchise, you have to actually put intellectual property into your business model, because you're selling the business as a box to a franchisee, for instance. So there are a lot of different ways that we can look at using growth systems to further scale and make things much more efficient for you. And then, of course, there's the sexy part that a lot of people are interested in, which is marketing. We didn't get to talk about that too much today, but that is something that I always focus on with each of my clients, even my blueprint clients. And we don't just focus on, a funnel for direct response. We don't just focus on brand awareness and just getting your name out there. We have those for sure, but we also focus on other strategies as well, like grassroots marketing. A lot of people don't put any merit to grassroots marketing. And yet, in my experience, it is the number one driver of almost every business, because every business owner, from a solopreneur to Jeff Bezos, they are all doing grassroots marketing. It just goes from trying to use grassroots and shaking hands to get a sale to shaking hands to make an acquisition. So no matter what level of business you're in, you always need to have that grassroots marketing approach. And that's one thing that we talk about in this Launchpad. Now, what our model does, just to give you guys a quick case study, this is Jenna Bowden. She's one of our amazing clients. And in just 6 months after going through our RevScale Launchpad model, we were able to grow this hair extension salon's membership service from from where it was by increasing almost 70%, over 70% actually. In about a month or two, we're probably going to see an 100% increase from where we saw this at the beginning of the year. So really awesome results that Jenna was able to see by implementing these things in our model. Now, here's some things to what to expect. What is this exactly? Like I said, it's not really an online course, and it's also not exactly a one-on-one coaching program. So what is it exactly? What we do is we have a business audit. It's a 35-point analysis of your business to tell us exactly where you're at. This is a very in-depth form that you fill out with mostly open-ended questions. And I review personally every single one of these forms so that I can really get a good insight into your business and audit it and start to come up with some strategies. And then from there, we get into a 1-hour one-on-one deep dive session. And this is where I go over that business audit. I talk about any gaps that I already found. And then I talk about some of the strategies that I'm already thinking of and making sure that it aligns with you and what your goals are in business and clarifying some things. And then I take all of that and I package that into your own customized blueprint. And this is a 13-page tailored roadmap to your business with a video walkthrough by myself just for you, that's designed to give you a concrete strategy to scale in the next 12 months. So this isn't, you just going through an online course that you're probably never going to actually end up doing, or if you do, it's going to be too long for you. Like this, by and large, after the 1-hour deep dive, it's going to take you about, 2, maybe 3 hours max to get through everything that's in this blueprint. And, what's more than that, while this is something that a lot of our clients, when, our coaching and consulting clients, they paid us $3,000 for just these 3 things. There's so many things that this actually does for you. This is where you don't need to compete with service providers that have the same credentials as you. Just like I was saying earlier, if you have more certifications, or if you have your own intellectual property, for instance, that's going to help you scale much better than your competition. And because of that, you're also going to be able to charge more than your competition and book more business at the same time. And finally, you're going to be able to run your business in less time because the business is no longer running you. I talked a lot about that earlier in this session, because we are laser focused on making sure that you as a business owner are not being overrun by your business. We don't, it's a personal mission of mine to make sure that there's no more folks that are like my dad, who worked 80, 90-hour weeks, 6 days a week, and didn't see their family too much, even though they were my dad was an amazing person. And I know that one of my regrets in life is not spending more time with him while he was alive. And I know for a lot of us, that's a huge importance. And it's a big mission for me to work with that with every single entrepreneur that I work with. So that's the thing. I already mentioned this earlier. So this slide is just the way to bring it home. Just imagine having an online course where the instructor is telling you exactly how to implement these strategies into your own business. That's what this strategic blueprint is all about. So, okay, that's all well and good, but how can I help you implement this blueprint and apply it correctly? So this is something that I've done for just a few folks in the past, and this is a limited time bonus that goes away pretty quickly. So this is something I worked out with KIRK, and I think it's an amazing thing that we've been able to add for our Rescue Owners Live folks. So we added a few bonuses. The first is having tailored templates and resources. So another thing that we do that is different from a lot of people. A lot of folks will bonus some templates, some scripts, some funnel maps, and different things like that. What we do is I actually take all of the different templates and tools and resources that I have custom developed for my consulting and coaching clients, and they're paying upwards of $30,000 a year for these materials as part of what they get. And I look at each blueprint and I say, okay, well, what does KIRK need for this blueprint? What does he need for this X, Y, and Z? So I'm going to give him these specific these specific tools and templates. Not only that, but I also, for some of them, pre-fill in some of those tools and templates based off of the information I've already gotten from you in the business audit. So these are much more custom than the things that you're probably used to with other businesses and organizations. It's not just your run-of-the-mill templates and resources. So definitely something that you can use to implement your action plan that you get from the blueprint. The second thing that I'll also do, because implementation is so important, we want to make sure that you are on track to implementing the strategies that we talk about in this blueprint. When we deliver it to you, 30 days later, we will do a 30-minute implementation coaching call. And then another 30 days later, at the 60-day mark, we're going to do another follow-up to make sure that you are making progress on the roadmap that we've given you. So this is something, we charge our coaching clients $1,000 a month for our for 4 calls a week. So, or for 4 calls a month. So this is a $500 value. It's a legit $500 value with what clients are currently paying us. And this is not just with myself. This is also my wife and business partner. She comes in on these meetings as well. So you're getting really 2 for the price of 1 with this bonus. Okay, so this is everything that you're getting. You're getting the blueprint, the deep dive, and the roadmap. You're getting the tailored tools and templates, and the 2 implementation calls. And that's all a legit value of $4,500. You're not seeing on here a crazy figure like, this is worth $45,000. I know what my time is actually worth right now, and it is still worth quite a bit. But I also don't want to be just pulling your leg just to show you what the value of what you're getting. This is real value that we're talking about. And we're only going to get this to you guys for $997. Not $4,500, but $997. So I know KIRK, he's got a link that he'll probably drop in the chat. So make sure to keep a lookout for that. Is there a short link that I can audibly say, KIRK, or maybe you can say it?
I don't have a short link, but the link is in the chat. So if you go to whatever you're listening to, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, just look in the chat section, and I just threw down a long form link. If you do want to go to, rescuesiteservices.com, you can hit store and just, look up the blueprints in the search, and then you can easily find it that way as well. But the link is there. Everyone who subscribes to Rescue Owners Live will be getting a follow-up email tonight, tomorrow, whenever we can, get this out to you as quickly as possible, because this is only going to last a few days, because this is stupid. I mean, this is a stupid offer. He sells this for $4,500. And he said, "Hey, KIRK, I want to do something very special for your audience, and I only want to do it for $997. I'm like, "You're kidding me." So listen, that is an incredible offer. I mean, can you put up on the screen one more time what all that includes? Because this is absolutely incredible. Blueprint with business audit, deep dive, and roadmap. That's a $3,000 offer. Tailored tools and templates for $1,000, and then 2 implementation calls of $500 total. $4,500. If you're ready to take your business to the next level, this is what you need to do. It's $997. And let me tell you something. You don't have a $997 problem. You have a $1 million or 10 million or maybe even $1 billion problem, depending on how big you're thinking. So if you're considering getting to a 7 or 8 figure, or even 9 figure business, and you're worried about $997, then this offer is not for you. But if you are ready to grow your business more effectively, efficiently, and profitably, jump on this offer as quickly as possible. And Jed is going to take such good care of you because he knows how to do it. He's done it. Jed, I'm sorry, I got a little excited there.
I love it, Kirk. I love it. No, it's great. No, I mean, look, this is something I'm very passionate about as well. Like, if I haven't, driven that home enough, my mission in life right now is to get entrepreneurs as much time freedom and as much scalability as they possibly want. As possible in my lifetime. I'm on a mission right now, actually. Like if you've ever heard of Jim Collins, my big, hairy, audacious goal is to get business owners their time back and have 10,000 of those businesses that have actually done that in the next 10 years. That's what I want to do. And I hope that you guys are wanting to be a part of that. There's, quite a few different brands that we've worked with. I've worked with, back at my Advance Your Reach days, I obviously got to work with a lot of companies and being able to implement some of these strategies. Even, that's how I got connected with KIRK, with Grant Cardone and 10X. But also now, personally, I've seen this from a doctor's office to an e-commerce business, hair salon, marketing agency, like a law firm. Like, there's so many different varied businesses. It's kind of funny, that's one thing that I now preach on is you don't really actually need to niche down. You usually have to find the niche first. And this is a strategy that's going to help you do that, And, one last thing that I'll say that I always love sharing is this testimonial from one of my former clients, Veronica Romney. So she founded this company called My Modern Brand. And what we did is, so I'll just read her quote. She says, Jed single-handedly developed my creative and unique revenue plan that in its first launch did over $25,000. And since then, I've had consecutive 5-figure launches based on this format. And I actually talked to her about this, several months back. And at that point, she had actually, in those future launches that she mentioned, it was a total of like $75,000 in 6 months. And that was just from implementing one strategy. And that one strategy, just to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, was something that we were talking about earlier. She wanted to take her intellectual property and make that into her own certification program. She had a training workshop that she had people go through. And just that revenue stream alone added $75,000 to her business. So, if you want to scale in that way, I would love to be a part of it.
Jed, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any specific questions for Jed, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to Rescue Owners Live. And what we can do is we can get those questions answered for you directly by Jed. But most importantly, make sure you take advantage of that offer, because I think there's only 3 more slots left. We have a limited amount of people who can, because he has a time cap as well. So we have about 3 more left. So if you're interested in growing your business, take advantage of that offer, and we will see you soon. Jed, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you soon.
All right,
give it up for Jed. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This was season 2, episode 18, with a very special guest, Jed Olson. We are on every Tuesday from 7 to 8, and we are here to help you grow your business more effectively, efficiently, and profitably. And we will see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, be great.